Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here, and today we're talking about some more Kino titles, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about here, so I will get right into it. We'll start with stuff that's part of their Kino Cult line, which is a very exciting imprint that they've, I think, debuted this year. I want to say all the Kino Cult titles are this year. Maybe there were some last year, but we're on like 8, 9, 10, 11, that sort of grouping. And it's fun to see this. Like, some of these are titles they've released before, but now are upgrading to 4K. Like, for instance, Nightmare Beach, directed by the great Umberto Lenzi, who is one of those Italian filmmakers, and he's not credited as Umberto Lenzi in this film. He's credited as like some very American sounding name, I feel like. But he, of course, would do things like Cannibal Ferox, Nightmare City, one of my favorites, Almost Human, Eyeball, Paranoia. There's that whole box set of sort of giallo-esque films he did with, was it Carol Baker, I think? Paranoia and, I'm trying to think, So Sweet, So Perverse, A Quiet Place to Kill, Knife of Ice. But he also did action movies like Rome, Armed to the Teeth, The Cynic, the Rat, and the Fist, Violent Naples, giallos like Seven Bloodstains or Orchids. I mentioned Eyeball already. Syndicate Sadists, again, action. So he's a very diverse and I find to be a pretty solid genre director. This particular film is a sort of a slasher revenge type movie. Shockingly gory tale of a madman in a motorcycle helmet who is taking out young co-eds all over the sparkling sands of South Florida during spring break. As the body count creeps up, Miami detective John Saxon tries to keep ahead of the curve in this carnage-packed slasher gem from the maestro of the macabre, featuring a rollicking score by Goblin's Claudio Simonetti, who also did like Suspiria, Dawn of the Dead, Heroin Busters, and co-starring Michael Parks as well. Nicholas the Toth, Sarah Buxton. It's an interesting one, and it opens with an execution of a bad gentleman who vows his revenge, and he returns. He's part of a motorcycle gang. He returns from the dead, apparently, with his motorcycle, which now has basically an electric chair built into it so that he can kill people who ride on it and touch a certain, there's like a place to grab on the side. So you can be killed by sitting on it or grabbing onto the side of it, and he kills a lot of people that way and other ways. But yeah, it's definitely one of those Italian films that's really playing hard at being American, having an American cast, etc. But this one's been available on Blu-ray, and this, of course, is a 4K release as well as Blu-ray. And it is a 2019 UHD SDR master by Studio Canal from a 4K scan of the 35 camera negative. And it includes an audio commentary by the great Sam Deegan and something called Nightmare Rock, which is an interview with composer Claudio Simonetti, which is about 16 minutes. So a couple nice features, but this is Kino Cult number 9. I don't really have these in order, just so you know, and I'm missing some of the titles in the Kino Cult line, but I'll go through the ones I have. So this is a nice 80s slasher, if you're a fan of such thing. It's a late 80s entry. It's from 89, but definitely a fun one for genre fans. Then we have number 8 in the Kino Cult line. This is the 4K release of Cannibal Apocalypse. Now, this is also starring John Saxon, which is why I'm putting this one right here. And this one is directed by Antonio Margheriti, who is one of those directors like Lenzi, who did a bunch of stuff and was kind of utilitarian in that way. This one is about, well, the website says, the horrors of war take on a whole new meaning for Vietnam vet Norman Hopper, and that's John Saxon, whose quiet domestic life in Atlanta is shattered by the return of his war buddy Charlie Giovanni Lombardo Radis, who is in House at the Edge of the Park. A combat veteran who dredges up terrifying flashbacks of flesh-eating and bloodshed in the war-torn jungles. Now on the run from the law after taking a bite out of an unwilling victim, Charlie begs Norman to help him get out of town with another fellow veteran, Tom, played by Tony King. Soon the ragtag team of cannibals are fighting for their lives, spreading a deadly contagion through the city before heading into the sewers for a gut-wrenching climax no one will soon forget. It's a pretty cool climax, I must say, in terms of the sewer stuff. One of the most infamous Italian horror films of all time, Cannibal Apocalypse, was heavily censored in many countries where it played under such titles as Cannibals in the Streets and Invasion of the Flesh Hunters, which I actually have a VHS of in my garage somewhere, the Invasion of the Flesh Hunters release. Obviously censored. Directed by cult filmmaker Antonio Margheriti, who also did like The Long Hair of Death, Seven Deaths in a Cat's Eye, just to name a few. Cannibal Apocalypse is not for the faint of heart or those with full stomachs. Yeah, it is an interesting one. This one includes audio commentary by novelist and critic Tim Lucas. Always welcome, always good. Cannibal Apocalypse Redux documentary with the cast and crew. Cannibal King interview with actor Tony King. Apocalypse in the Streets video tour of filming locations, and an alternate title sequence in trailers. Studio Canal 4K transfer looks pretty good. I don't know the specifics of the source. I guess it's a 2020 US UHD SDR master from a 4K scan of the 35 camera negative, so I do know. And of course, a Blu-ray and a 4K are included in this release, and that Cannibal Apocalypse documentary, the Cannibal Apocalypse Redux, is a 54-minute documentary, so basically feature-length doc that's included with this, on top of that Tim Lucas commentary and the other interviews and location footage. So pretty solid stuff in terms of a nice Italian cannibal release from Kino. Okay, now we have a bunch of Animal Attacks movies, and I'll go through, there's a couple I don't have, but I'll start with Food of the Gods. This is number 10 in the Kino line here. And it is directed by Burt I. Gordon, Mr. Big, and stars Marjoe Gortner, Pamela Franklin, Ralph Meeker, Ida Lupino, John Cypher, John McLean, Belinda Belaski, who she was a Joe Dante regular. Get ready for the taste of hell. B-movie maestro Burt I. Gordon, Village of the Giants, Empire of the Ants, which is coming right up in a second here. The godfather of the gigantic creature genre delivers the biggest midnight movie of all time with this spine-tingling, I didn't know if that's true. That's interesting. Tale of Ecology Gone Berserk. Based on H.G. Wells' classic tale of sci-fi terror, The Food of the Gods predicts a future where animals are suddenly spine-tingling, at the top of the food chain and eager to get their fill. And this is on a remote island. I do like animal attack movies set on remote islands, like The Pack and Empire of the Ants coming up. A mysterious substance is oozing from the ground. A farmer sees that it acts as a growth hormone and thinks his fortune is made, but when rats, chickens, worms, and wasps begin sampling the potent substance, they morph into bloodthirsty giants. Now it's up to the island's few residents and visitors, including Marjoe Gortner, Pamela Franklin, Ralph Meeker, John Cypher, and Ida Lupino, to destroy the food of the gods before the animals take over for good. So yeah, this one's fun, and it has that sort of classic Burt I. Gordon matte shot type special effects where you have basically a regular sized animal, but blown up sort of and put against a backdrop of what would be a normal sized person. So the animal just looks gigantic. It's usually done through matting, and sometimes miniatures, depends on what he's doing, but that's one of Mr. Big's big favorite techniques. This one this is just a Blu-ray, by the way, and I think almost all the rest of these are just Blu-rays, which is not to say that's a problem. This one has a new audio commentary by film historians Lee Gambin and John Harrison, author of Wildcat, the films of Marjorie Gortner. R.I.P. Lee Gambin. He's definitely a part of several of these animal attacks, and he has his own book all about the animal attack genre. He was a huge fan of that. It also has an audio commentary by writer, producer, director Bird Eye Gordon, so that's very cool. Interview with actress Belinda Belaski as well. And in terms of the scan, I don't know what the deal is. I know this came out from Shout Factory as a double with something else at some point, but yeah, this one doesn't mention anything about a new scan, but it looks good to me anyway. So that's Food of the Gods. And then moving right into another Bird Eye Gordon, we have Empire of the Ants, also Blu-ray. This is number 11 in this set of Kino Cult titles. And this one is, I don't want to say like big fan. I'm a bigger fan of the next one, but I do like this one quite a bit. It's from 1977. Food of the Gods was 76, just to give you context. This one has Joan Collins, Robert Lansing, John David Carson, Albert Salmi, Robert Pine, Jacqueline Scott, Pamela Susan Shoup, and Tom Fadden. It's No Picnic from sci-fi mastermind H.G. Wells, a B-movie bigwig Burt I. Gordon. Brace yourselves for the mutant mayhem and pestilent payback in this cult classic creature feature about good bugs gone bad. Starring the Queen of Mean, Joan Collins. This incredible insect extravaganza is swarming with fresh-crawling chills, hair-raising thrills, and spine-tingling horror with Venge Ants. A heavenly paradise becomes a hellish nightmare when a toxic spill turns harmless ants into rampaging radioactive retrobates. They're giants, so it's like them in some ways. It's like a follow-up to that sort of thing. Stumbling into their creepy lair, a sleazy land developer, Joan Collins, and her clients, including Robert Lansing and John David Carson, are horrified to realize the ants are having a picnic and humans are on the menu, fleeing for their lives, only to be squashed underfoot. They soon discovered that these bad boy bugs are hell-bent on exterminating mankind and building an evil empire where humans check in, but they can't check out. Yeah, it's got a fun setup, which is that Joan Collins runs this island where she's inviting people on one of those free, day trips where you get to go on the island and you're being pitched on buying real estate, and the hope is that the people involved will, but you actually find out that just about everybody that goes on this trip is some kind of a sad sack, depressed person that's in one form or another of disarray in terms of their personal lives. But it's still fun, and I just enjoy giant ant movies. I mean, them is one of my all-time favorite animal attack, insect attack movies. So despite this being a little cheesy, and then the effects are done a little, I mean, there's definitely some matting, but there's some other stuff that's done that looks pretty good, and the ants make this sort of high-pitched sound that's not quite like the sound they make in them, but it's enough to be unnerving. And yeah, I'm a fan. So this is a fun one, and I'm glad that they put this out. Another one that Scream Factory had put out previously as a double with another film. This one has a new audio commentary by film historians David Dalval and filmmaker historian Michael Verratti, as well as an audio commentary by producer-director Bird Eye Gordon. Yeah, I mean, looks another one that looks good to me, but I don't know the source of the, of the transfer as far as I can tell. But I like this collection. I like what they're doing. So one more this is a little later in the group, but I'm going to go for it now, and then I'll talk about the others I don't have. And this is my favorite of this whole group, ultimately. Kingdom of the Spiders, 1977. Great cast, including William Shatner, of course, Woody Strode, Tiffany Bowling, David McLean, Natasha Ryan. And the website says, a living, crawling hell on earth. That's one of the classic taglines for the film. This 1977 creep show stars legendary William Shatner as the veterinarian Rack Hansen. I forgot his name was Rack. Faced with the puzzling death of a number of local farm animals and even greater numbers of helpless animals meet their deaths. As that happens, it's discovered that hundreds of tarantulas occupy the farmland. This is strange indeed. Tarantulas don't live in colonies, or do they? An attractive entomologist, brilliantly played by Tiffany Bowling, who was also in The Candy Snatchers, is called to the dusty little Arizona town to explain the sudden arrival of spiders and their unusual behavior. They also have these giant hills that they are coming out of. There's actually an interesting similarity between this and Night of the Lepus in some ways, although I obviously like this better. I do like Night of the Lepus, personally. It's a question of, is it too late? Time seems to be running out as a new species of eight-legged freaks are now numbering in the thousands. Is it even possible to halt this arachnid explosion? The spiders are everywhere, and man is their prey. Directed by John Bud Cardos, who also did The Dark and Mutant, and as I said, featuring Woody Strode, Lou Dressler from Truck Stop Women, and Alta Voice Davis from Can't Stop the Music. Just a really solid, insects attack movie with a great ending that tops most of the endings that these movies have. Although Empire of the Ants has a pretty amazing ending too. I'm just a big fan of this one. I like Shatner in it, and I like how many of these actors are game to have spiders thrown all over them and how they react to that. And so this one's been released a few different times. I want to say the most recent was a Code Red Blu-ray, and I don't have the specifics of that transfer, but I know it was a new scan at the time. I'm assuming this is the same scan. I could be wrong. Another one that looks good to me, and has a new audio commentary with film author historian Lee Gambin. Again, R.I.P. And I love that he was so involved in this line, this section of the cult, Kino Cult titles. A very good track from him. Audio commentary by director John Bud Cardos, producer Igor Cantor, Spider Wrangler Jim Brockett, cinematographer John Morrow, moderated by Lee Christian and Scott Spiegel. Also, a third audio commentary by producer Igor Cantor, actress Tiffany Bowling, and that's moderated by Mark Edward Hoyk, a friend of mine and a good dude, a great film historian. Interview with actress Tiffany Bowling, and interview with writer Steve Lodge, also included, as well as a radio spot. But this is, like I said, this is sort of the one from this group for me in terms of a favorite, and I'm glad to see it get a re-release. I don't know if the Code Red disc had been out of print, but very possibly it had. So nice to see this available and affordable at about a $17 price point at the moment. The two that I don't have are Squirm, Jeff Lieberman's movie with Don Scardino about killer worms, which has come out at least two other times. I have an Arrow Blu-ray and a Scream Factory Blu-ray, I believe. And this one does have a new audio commentary by Lee Gambin and John Harrison, so I may have to pick it up, but I think the rest of the extras included have been available on previous releases, and I don't see anything about a new scan. But definitely more enjoyable than you would think for a movie about killer worms, which don't seem like they'd be threatening. But I like Jeff Lieberman, and I enjoy that film. The other one is Frogs, the George McCowan film from 1972, starring Ray Milland, Sam Elliott, Joan Van Ark, Adam Rourke, Lynn Borden, and this one also has a new audio commentary. This is from David Del Valle and film producer Dan Marino, who's son of the NFL legend Yeah, this was released as a Scream Factory with a double with another film that I'm forgetting. So these are getting these standalone, better bit rate releases, which is pretty cool. But yeah, one of the few 4th of July set horror movies outside of Jaws, obviously. So I think that's enjoyable. And Ray Milland and Sam Elliott together, very interesting. But yeah, so that's the other parts of this Kino Cult Animal Attack group, if you will. Just a few more here. We have another reissue. This is Navajo Joe, Sergio Corbucci's film, starring Burt Reynolds from 1966. A very solid Western and a Tarantino favorite, if I recall. Screen legend Burt Reynolds stars in this classic Western about a fearless Native American with a relentless vendetta. A band of outlaws headed by the sullen leader Duncan Aldo Sombral, who was in it for a few dollars more apparently, sweeps across the country like a plague, destroying everything in its path, including a Navajo village. The outlaws arrive in the town of Esperanza, where they are hired by a crooked doctor to hijack a bank train and share in the wealth. But the sole survivor from the Indian village, a renegade Navajo named Joe, that's Burt Reynolds, foils the plan by once again must take on Duncan and his ruthless comrades with unforgettable vengeance. Featuring the great Fernando Rey, with a top-notch direction by spaghetti western legend Sergio Corbucci, who did Django, The Hellbenders, The Great Silence, with a rousing and now classic score by Ennio Morricone, which was used in Election. If you recall, there's a moment where Tracy Flick sees that she's got some competition for, I can't remember if she's running for student body president or whatever she is, and suddenly you hear this screaming Morricone track. It's so funnily used in that, but it's really great music, has some great vocal elements to it, and it's one of my favorite Morricone scores, and it's just really solid. But yeah, it's just great to see Burt Reynolds. Yeah, he's playing a Native American, maybe not a great look, but ultimately he turns in a good performance and is kind of a one-man wrecking crew, like taking on this whole giant gang and finding a way to do it effectively, not without some hang-ups along the way, but still a very interesting film. And like I said, one that I believe Tarantino showed as part of one of his QT fests way back in the early 2000s that at the time I wasn't really even aware of. But this is a new Blu-ray. This had been out of print for a while, so it's back in print. It has a new audio commentary by filmmaker Alex Cox, who of course directed Repo Man, Straight to Hell, and others. He's the author of 10,000 Ways to Die, a director's take on the Italian Western. Always love his commentaries, always great, and he's a huge spaghetti Western fan, so he's always bringing something interesting. And this also has a scene-specific audio commentary by Ennio Morricone historian Gary Palmucci, as well as a trailer. So that's new extras, I think, that weren't included even on the previous disc. Definitely the commentary from Cox, but I want to say, I don't remember those others. They might have been there. But it's got a new slipcase, which is nice. And, yeah, just a very fun Burt Reynolds Western from Sergio Corbucci. And then shifting gears a bit, we have one more from Burt, and that is Paternity, which is from 1981 and is a comedy starring Burt alongside folks like Beverly D'Angelo, Lauren Hutton, Norman Fell, Paul Dooley, Elizabeth Ashley, Peter Billingsley, and Juanita Moore. Screen icon Burt Reynolds brings his magnetism and charm to the role of a would-be bachelor father in this sophisticated comedy. The problem, at 44, having lived a life of swinging singledom, and wanting it to stay that way, Buddy Evans, that's Burt, also wants a piece of immortality. He wants a child. The solution, a surrogate mother. No strings, no commitments. A long search unearths an aspiring musician, naturally, and one excuse me, one more hilarious than the next. Sorry. It's basically he has auditions is the thing, and he starts to come across this aspiring musician, that's Beverly D'Angelo, who agrees to bear his child in return for money to finance her studies in France. Complications, naturally. And one more hilarious than the next, thanks to the comedic talents of director David Steinberg, and a superb cast filled out by Norman Fell, Paul Dooley, Elizabeth Ashley, Juanita Moore, Peter Billingsley, and Lauren Hutton. It's a weird one. And just this idea, he wants you to have his baby. It's kind of creepy. It's kind of odd. Feels like only in the 80s could this get made with Burt. But Burt does bring his, usual charm and makes this an interesting, mostly forgotten, I feel like, comedy at this point. I think it had been difficult to see for a long time. So this is a brand new HD master from a 4K scan of the original camera negative, and includes an audio commentary by entertainment journalists, authors Brian Reisman and Max Every. I like their tag team commentaries quite a bit. So very curious what they have to say about this one. Also includes a slipcover. That is Burt twice. One more 80s comedy, and this one also from 1981, Underground Aces, directed by Robert Butler, who was like a Disney guy, but also did like, Night of the Juggler and Turbulence and Up the Creek and, very fascinating dude, ultimately. This has got a really interesting, wide-ranging cast, and it feels like, I don't know if it's trying to take off on, I don't even know if DC Cab had come out yet, Police Academy isn't out yet, but it's definitely, I don't know if it's an Airplane kind of thing that they're trying to do. It feels like something that would happen in the wake of Police Academy because it has Michael Winslow in it, but Police Academy isn't for like 2 or 3 more years. But Dirk Benedict, Melanie Griffith, T.K. Carter, Michael Winslow, Robert Hedges, Sid Haig, Frank Gorshin, Jerry Orbach, Randy Brooks, Ernie Hudson, Dirk Benedict, sexy Melanie Griffith, and Frank Gorshin star in this zany romantic comedy from director Robert Butler. Deep below a posh Beverly Hills hotel, you'll find the Underground Aces, a fun-loving, fast-driving, slightly larcenous team of car parking jockeys. So this opens with a funny montage of like how expensive parking was in 1981 in Los Angeles. It's obviously much more expensive now, but I just found that really funny. Just like to see a montage of like parking signs and how much it costs and like, lot full and all this stuff. But they're definitely a ragtag bunch, this group. Life in the underground parking lot is far from dull. There's soccer for a start, played with a giant weather balloon and 2 sports cars. Then there's false fire alarms, a kidnapping on horseback, and a lovesick sheik to contend with. There's also a really great gag with some bowling balls. Like there's a car full of bowling balls, a trunk full of bowling balls that comes out, and they end up like bouncing around the parking lot and going down various levels. There's even like a Rube Goldberg kind of joke that totally screws up this one car that's being worked on. Anyway, it's goofy stuff. When the Aces aim to instruct the Sheik in the intricacies of American-style romance, their scheming goes a bit too far, and what started as a little simple matchmaking turns into an all-out riot complete with high-speed chases and even a trained housefly. Underground Aces has got to be one of the funniest, wackiest, warmest films you've ever seen. Amazing supporting cast. I already went through really, really incredible stuff. Randy Brooks is from Reservoir Dogs, by the way. He shows up in this as well. Yeah, I mean, does every joke land? Definitely not. But if you're into this sort of goofiness, Moving Violations is another one, which would come out, I think, 6 years later, that feels akin to something like this. But maybe a little ahead of its time in terms of like Police Academy type knockoffs. Michael Winslow doing his usual shtick, always entertains. But yeah, Dirk Benedict and Melanie Griffith, really interesting. So this one is a brand new HD master from a 2K scan of a 35 interpositive. I feel like this movie's been pretty unknown for a while, so this is kind of neat. If you're an 80s comedy fan like me, to get a chance to check this out. It has a new audio commentary by HorrorFix.com's James G. Chandler and Ash Hamilton as well, which I need to check out. I would love to hear some backstory on this one. Underground Aces comes with a nice slipcover. Fun stuff. And then lastly, we've actually got kind of a heavy hitter here. We've got No Way Out on 4K. This is directed by Roger Donaldson, who great director that I'm a big fan of. He did things like, I know there's Volcano, and then there is Dante's Peak, which I was trying to think of. He also did Cocktail, Species, 13 Days, very underrated, I think. The Bounty, Smash Palace, going way back to his Australian roots. But Cadillac Man and White Sands, which I just talked about recently as part of a neo-noir set from Imprint. But anyway, so No Way Out is ostensibly a remake of the 40s noir The Big Clock, but they've done an interesting job of updating it here, wherein... Well, I'm curious how much they describe here. This, of course, stars Kevin Costner, Gene Hackman, Sean Young, Will Patton, Howard Duff, the classic film actor and husband of Ida Lupino, longtime husband, George DeZunda in an interesting role, Fred Thompson. Charged with high voltage tension and suspense, the electrifying thriller No Way Out is a tightly wound tale of intrigue set in the political world of Washington and the inner corridors of the Pentagon. In this 80s box office smash, I didn't remember that, very not surprising, because Costner was hot during this time and very attractive in this role. Stars a naval hero, Lieutenant Commander Tom Farrell, the new CIA liaison for Defense Secretary David Bryce, a high-ranking master of high-ranking political maneuvers played by the dynamic Gene Hackman. Sexy Sean Young is a gorgeous party girl who plays politics herself as Bryce's mistress and Farrell's secret lover, and Will Patton is the secretary's ruthless aide, architect of a cover-up scheme that protects his boss but entraps Farrell, putting his life in danger with its serpentine plot twists, narrow escapes, and true-to-life Pentagon setting. No Way Out is a harrowing story of an innocent man caught in a complex web of romance and murder, power and corruption, stylishly directed by Roger Donaldson, from Kenneth Fearing's classic noir novel, The Big Clock. I do like what they've done here, and they don't spoil the conspiracy and what's involved, but I will say that there's a picture that is taken that is being clear, like sort of the resolution's being solidified by computers, but it's taking a long time, and the Costner knows that once the picture is fully developed, I guess, or decoded by the computer, that he'll be revealed and he will likely be in big trouble. So he's sort of racing against that clock to get to prove his innocence. This is a brand new HD master from 4K scan of the 35 camera negative. It looks great on 4K. New audio commentary by film historian Steve Mitchell and writer-actor Richard Brewer. And then we have an old audio commentary from director Roger Donaldson as well. Plus film stories, Simon Brew interviews director Roger Donaldson, 5.1 surround and lossless audio. This is a Blu-ray and a 4K. Anyway, that will do it for this round of Kino stuff. Lots to check out, lots to enjoy. I love the Kino Cult line, and I'm very curious to see where they continue to go with that stuff. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.